Hey everybody, Zeus King coming at you. I want to talk today about the Muhammad Ali Act and MMA Fighters unions. Nate Quarry was recently interviewed, so was Randy Couture, about having the Muhammad Ali Act, which pertains to professional boxing, have it expanded to mixed martial arts. This would be really a great thing, and as Randy Couture himself said, it's a no-brainer. What it's going to do, if it was implemented, is going to give the fighters a say in everything. It's going to end long-term contracts. It's going to end people being tied down to one group or another, and also it will take away the ability to make the title fights by the promoters themselves. So in other words, you won't see very spur of the moment, title changes, title matches being made rather by a promoter such as Dana White or even Scott Coker. Anybody trying to do something at the last minute, all be decided by an outside committee. And similar to what exactly what boxing does, how they decide who gets title shots, not the promoter. Essentially, I think this would mean the end of titles by the promotions. Bellator and UFC titles could possibly come to an end. I'm not exactly sure how that'll work out if this happens, but you can sign a petition to help get this enacted, because it's going to take literally an act of Congress to have this done. What it'll do is, when you look at the state of the UFC and a fighter right now who could make between $36,000 and $72,000 on a 3-fight deal, it might take 18 to 20 months to get those 3 fights, which kind of breaks down your yearly, your 12-month calendar year of earnings from the UFC. Way down into somewhere 24-30 grand a year, which is not a lot of money. I mean, that's like making $16 an hour. And once again, we're talking about the biggest, the most powerful mixed martial arts organization in the world. Another thing that this does, that the Muhammad Ali Act would do, is it's going to allow for transparency. It's going to expose everything that all these organizations spend their money on. So you're going to see, it's like, okay, well, Dana White makes this much, and they had to put this much into the production of this, and they had to Dana White's, the guy that goes gets his smoothie for him, he makes 150 grand a year. Well, is that right? Hell, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound right. I don't know how much his assistant makes. I don't know if he has an assistant, but I'm sure he has a secretary. What you're going to see is all of their costs, all the money they spend, and then you're going to see what they actually bring in, and we already know what they're paying the fighters. And it would essentially, it would pretty much nullify this Reebok deal as an exclusive through the UFC. And I know that's something that that they've been really thrilled about. But when you're only getting, a lot of fighters are only getting about $2,500 from Reebok per fight to wear that ugly crap that nobody likes and nobody's buying. It's gonna re-allow for the fighters to have a say in everything. The fighters are going to be able to have a say in the referees, the judges, in everything that goes on. You're going to have a lot higher quality of everything to happen. And when people say, oh, well, the top guys aren't going to support this because they're not going to make as much money, that's not true. They're going to make even more money, because they're going to see how much is coming in. And when you look at at the boxing costs and what their payout is versus what they bring in, the numbers I'm seeing are 80-20. They're paying out 80% of what they get, and they're keeping 20%. Now, they're not doing all those things that the UFC does, like the Ultimate Fighter and a lot of these other things. But when it boils down to it, is that really their job? Is it their job to help, truly, bring in these crops of fighters and then string them along for 1 or 2 or 3 year deals where they've essentially got control of these fighters for 1 to 3 years? Once again, I think the Muhammad Ali Act, is going to put an end to stuff like that too. And a lot of people are getting really tired of the Ultimate Fighter. I don't know if it's got a place anymore. I don't know if there's a lot of things. The whole basis of the Ultimate Fighting Championship was to change things forever. It did. It changed the way we looked at martial arts, because you saw practical martial arts and different styles, different forms go head to head like we'd never seen it before. And so through change, they formed an establishment. Well, the establishment's not working. It's not working good for fighters. Like Nate Quarry said, he was paid $10,000 for his fight against Rich Franklin for the middleweight title, and that's when he got knocked out so hard it messed up his vertebra. He said he's indebted to the UFC on the one hand because they paid for his medical expenses, but he also said that at the time that was the 6th largest gate in UFC history, so if he'd have gotten paid better, he might have been able to handle it all on his own. So we have a lot of different things to consider, and to give the fighters their say in things is the best thing possible for the sport. Just like every other fighter union, every union in every professional sport, hockey, football, basketball, baseball, you're looking out, they look out for everybody. They don't look out for just the top guys, they look out for everybody. And they will bring more fairness and a more even playing field, and it'll take away a lot of this power and a lot of the things that make people not like some of these promoters. It'll take a lot of their power away from them. And when you look at the possibilities, like when I was saying before about a fighter only being able to get 3 UFC fights a year. Well, if he could get 3 UFC fights a year, and if he could get a King of the Cage fight, a Bellator fight or 2, if a guy is healthy and keeps winning, keeps fighting, could possibly get 4, 5, maybe 6 fights in a year. It's extremely hard to get that right now, even though a lot of guys are ready, willing to do that kind of thing. And then what you're also doing is you're creating a bidding war for these guys. Exciting fighters are going to be rewarded. Effectiveness, stalling, things like that, they wouldn't be rewarded through this. If you're just doing enough, if you're just holding guys down, if you're just doing enough to win a fight and to preserve your spot, it's not going to be there for very long, because when people don't want to watch you, they're not gonna have to pay you what they had been paying you. So it's going to ask the athletes to step up as well. So fighters, managers, and there are so many people who have so much to gain by this that I think that it's foolish not to sign the petition to help expand the Muhammad Ali Act into mixed martial arts. It's something that fighters need very badly. Everyone complains about how bad they get treated, how little they get paid. And yes, you do get into this for the love of the sport, but you have to treat it as a business, or because everybody's body breaks down. I've seen young and old fighters firsthand. And if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a business model, if you don't have something to fall back on, well, then you're going to be screwed when you get older. Because nobody's, Kimbo and Royce Gracie, that doesn't happen all the time. You're not going to see 50-year-old guys fighting in the main event of mixed martial arts cards for very much longer. It's a simple fact of, we need fighters to be able to have input in what goes on, because they're the ones that are creating the desire to watch. And when you look at the UFC, what they created was, they created a mixed martial arts promotion, and they changed it into more of, they didn't use boxing as their business model, they used pro wrestling as their business model. They made the cards, tried to make cards exciting from top to bottom, and trying to keep guys that are popular for long-term contracts. And they've created a brand name. Their brand name is stronger than the individual fighters. And honestly, it's the fighters who built the UFC. It's the fighters who've built Bellator. You know, so the money needs to be looked at transparently. And quite honestly, we all have, you know, a good idea. And what I've said before, talking about, you know, fighter pay, was Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman rematch. That sold a little over 1.25 million pay-per-views at $55 a pay-per-view, well over $60 million. Half of that goes to the pay-per-view company. I understand that, so that's well over $30 million. $6 million gate. UFC probably got at least half of that. So $33 million to the UFC from that one event. The amount of money that they paid out to fighters that night was right at a little over $2 million, not including numbers we don't know, like locker room bonuses or pay-per-view points, which certainly we all knew back then that Anderson Silva was getting some pay-per-view points, and so was Chris Weidman. But we don't know how much they got. And so what we do know is that from $30 million, just say $35 million that came in, not including sponsor money from the people who sponsored the UFC, Bud Light, people like that and whatnot, and the Fox network money and all that came in, okay, when you just take that, like basically $35 million, and say you only paid out $2 million to your fighters, and $1 million of that was split between Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman. That means the rest of the entire night, that split was $1 million between about 18 fighters. That's not a big average. You're talking about $20,000 a piece average, fighting on one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year, Muhammad Ali Act, and a link to sign the petition to expand the Ali Act into mixed martial arts. Support your local fighters, support local MMA. Have a great day. Thank you.